American mythologist Joseph Campbell famously said that while myths could be seen as depersonalized dreams, dreams can be seen as personalized myths. In Jungian art therapy, we use both dreams as well as myths and fairy tales to explore the deeper layers of the psyche, using the symbolic and metaphoric language that dreams and stories offer. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you a way that you can use a fairy tale in conjunction with art therapy techniques. And I'll be using an example from the Grimm brothers, a German fairy tale called The Fitcher's Bird. And I'll first read that story for you. If you're familiar with it, you can just skip ahead. And then I'll be giving you some prompts for image making from that story. And then I'll be doing one of those prompts with you just kind of as an example of how this process could go forward. So without further ado, you can get out your art journal or piece of paper, as well as the drawing or painting materials that you want to use and you might have at home. Once upon a time, there was a sorcerer who disguised himself as a poor man and went begging from house to house. One day he knocked on the door of a house where 3 sisters lived. A maiden opened the door and gave him a piece of bread. But the sorcerer, by simply touching her, compelled her to jump into his basket. Then he hurried away and carried her to his house, which stood in the middle of a dark forest. At first, he gave her everything that she wanted. He said, "My dear, you will like it here. With me, you will have everything that your heart desires." After a while, he told her that he had business to attend to far away and would be gone for several days. He gave her an egg and told her to take good care of it and always keep it with her. He also gave her a key. "Whatever you do, do not go into the room that this key opens. I forbid this on the penalty of death," he told her. She took the keys and the egg and promised to take good care of everything. When he had left, however, curiosity overtook the maiden. She went into the forbidden room, and there she saw a large basin with dead and butchered women lying in it. She was so horrified that she dropped the egg into the basin. She retrieved it immediately and wiped it clean. But the blood reappeared as quickly as she wiped it away, and no matter what she did, she could not remove the stain. Not long afterward, the man returned from his journey, and he immediately asked for the key and the egg. She handed them to him, shaking all the while, because he saw from the red stain that she had been in the bloody chamber. "You have disobeyed me," he roared. "Now you will pay with your life, and you too will inhabit the chamber." So he dragged her into the room, chopped her up in pieces, and tossed her into the basin with the others. "Now I will go get the second one," said the sorcerer, and again went to their house begging. He captured the second sister in the same manner, and in time she met the same fate as her sister. She entered the forbidden room, dropped the egg in the basin, and was chopped into pieces. Then he went and captured the third sister, but she was clever and sly. After he had given her the keys and the egg, and had gone away, she carefully put the egg aside and then examined the house, entering finally the forbidden chamber. When she saw her sisters in the bloody basin, she searched and searched until she found all their parts. Then she put them all back together, arms, legs, head, and body. In this way, her 2 sisters came back to life. The third sister led the other 2 out of the bloody chamber and hid them. When the sorcerer came back home, he was delighted to find no blood on the egg. He asked the third sister to become his wife. She agreed, but said that before she would marry him, he must carry baskets of gold back to her parents' house. She then secretly put her sisters in the basket and covered them with gold. "Don't delay," she said. She told the sorcerer, "I will watch you from my window and know if you stop and rest on the way." The sorcerer lifted the basket onto his back, but it was quite heavy. When he stopped to get a little bit of rest, one of the sisters in the basket cried out, "There's no time for rest, get going." The sorcerer thought it was the voice of the maiden watching from the window, so he stood up and continued, but the basket was so heavy that he had to rest. When he set the basket down, the other sister cried, "I'm watching you, get a move on." Thinking that his bride watched her from the window, he lifted the basket again onto his back and limped toward his destination. Meanwhile, the third sister decorated a skull with jewels and other fine things. Then she put it in the window so it looked for all the world like a beautiful maiden watching for her lover to return. Next, she undressed and covered herself in honey. She split open one of the mattresses and rolled in the feathers until she was completely covered. In this way, she disguised herself, for she looked so strange that no one could recognize her. Then she set out for home. As she was on her way, she met the wedding guests and on the way to the sorcerer's house, who asked, "Oh, Fitcher's bird, what are you doing here?" "I come from Fitcher's house, quite near." "And what is the young bride doing there?" "She swept the whole house clean, I know, and now looks out on the world below." Next she met the bridegroom slowly making his way back. He, like the others, asked, "Oh, Fitcher's bird, what are you doing here?" "I come from Fitcher's house, quite near." "And what is the young bride doing there?" "She swept the whole house clean, I know, and now looks out the world below." The bridegroom looked up, saw the skull in the window, and thinking it was her bride, he waved. But when he and his guests had all gone in, the brothers and kinsmen of the bride, who had been sent to rescue her, arrived. They locked the sorcerer and guests inside the house and set it on fire, and everyone burned to death. All right, let's look at some different ways that you could work with this fairy tale and your own relationship to it using image making. And I'm going to give you 3 different prompts, and you can choose one of them which feels that it resonates to you the most. But before I give you the prompts, I just want to give you a little bit of background on the way we can psychologically look at a story like a fairy tale or a myth. So it's very similar as looking at a dream, in a way that all the different characters in the fairy tale represents some aspects of a psyche. So the story can be seen as kind of a blueprint of the collective psyche, in a way that these characters represent different patterns of behavior or different patterns of energy. In Jungian terms, archetypes. So they reflect archetypal energies on a collective level. And when we look at it from a personal viewpoint, we can start to think about which aspects of ourselves are the different characters reflecting. So for the first prompt, I would like you to look at the 3 sisters as different versions of yourself in your life at different points of time. So for example, to look at the first 2 sisters kind of combined as they behave in a similar way, think of times in your life where you felt like you suffered some kind of painful defeat, you felt like you made a mistake, maybe you felt like you gave your power away to someone else. In whatever way you feel like you view the behavior of these sisters, which reflects your own life, or maybe it brings up some events from your own past in which you may have behaved somehow similarly. And then I want you to make an image of that version of yourself, how you felt during that time, what was the situation, just kind of first bringing up those feelings and thoughts from those times and what kind of events and associations you have to that. So then make an image of that. And then after that, I want you to look at the third sister, who behaves in a different way. She's a little bit more careful. She knows to leave the egg aside before she goes into the chamber, and she's able to save her 2 sisters. So again, look at your life where you kind of were able to overcome a challenge in this way. Maybe you learned something new, a new attitude, a new perspective, So you were able to fix something. And if you feel like you were not able to have this experience in some challenge, you could imagine what that would look like, what you would look like as kind of embodying the energy of this third sister. So that's going to be two images, kind of a before-after versions of yourself related to some kind of challenge. The second prompt would be to look at the sorcerer in the story, which is an interesting figure because it's quite contradicting. While it does a lot of harm and it's capable of doing harm, it also has these tools of magic and capabilities of magic to be able to transform and also to give the sisters these keys and the egg, which are quite powerful symbols in themselves. So I'd like you to look at this sorcerer in your life. Where in your life do you feel that something transformed, either first feeling like something benevolent and then going into something dark, or the other way around, like something was not as it seems? So I'd like you to view your kind of inner sorcerer in that way. And it can also be a sorcerer from within, in a way that maybe inside of you there's some part of yourself that embodies this same contradiction of power and destruction. So maybe think about that a little bit first in your life, and then you can start making an image from those reflections. The third prompt that you can look at, which is the most sensitive one, probably the most emotionally challenging, but if you feel ready and you want to try it, you certainly can make an image from this, which would be to look at the bloody chamber. And from a psychological viewpoint, you could look at the bloody chamber as some place within yourself where you've kind of thrown away something of yourselves, maybe something that didn't feel good, or maybe something that you repressed. And if you're a woman or you identify as a woman, it might especially be good to look at the feminine qualities that have been thrown away in this bloody chamber, because I think as women in a very masculine society, we do tend to do this. So that would be one perspective to look at, kind of seeing what is in your inner chamber. And maybe you will find something also that you will want to put back together and bring alive. To give you an example of how you could do this, I'm going to do the first prompt here, so drawing these sisters. And on the left side of the page, I drew the first two sisters combined who got killed, and on the right side is my inner third sister who saves them. And I started by sketching, but you don't really need to do that. You can just let the process take you forward. This is really not about aesthetics. There's really no right or wrong way to do this. So whatever arises within you, just trust that when you have the intention and the movement of your hands, then whatever needs to come out will come out. And I think this is the power of art therapy. Like once you do it for a little bit longer, you kind of start seeing the mystery of your unconscious and the wisdom of your unconscious, that it actually knows very well what it is doing. So you don't need to consciously actually think about it so much. And here, this first image, it's kind of like a bug that's stuck in some kind of a spider's web. It doesn't have any feet or arms, or they're kind of bundled inside, almost like this is the baby. If you saw my video on uncovering your inner symbol, I did also in that video do this symbol of the cloak that came up. So that's kind of also how art therapy works, is that it's not just about making one image, but it is a process of attending to your unconscious for a longer period of time, so that you start to see the undercurrents of what is happening there. you start to see what kind of things recur, or something that is kind of coming up over and over again. And about the materials that I'm using here, the pencils are Inktense pencils by the brand Derwent. They're kind of like watercolor pencils, but they're ink based, so I think they're a lot more pigmented than regular watercolor pencils. I use them a lot. You can draw with them first and then go over them with water using a brush, and they become very vibrant colors. Then the paint palette is gouache paints, and the gold was a watercolor paint. So then the second image was more of this spiritual kind of woman who has this golden center in the heart, which is connected upwards to the sky, to the godly, and then downwards to Mother Earth. For me, when I look at this image, it feels more centered, more empowered. The feet have come out, the hands have come out, the head has come out. So there's some sort of empowerment here. And there's very much similarities here, working with fairy tales, than there is with dream work. I also did a video on exploring dream figures, where in a similar way we look at the different figures in the dreams as parts of ourselves, different parts of ourselves. So if you want to work in a similar way with your own dreams, you might want to check out that video. So those are just some different kinds of prompts that you might want to try. And as you can see, there's so many different ways that you can look at a fairy tale. There's 100 different ways that you can make images from this. And when I work with groups, I especially find it interesting because sometimes I just read a fairy tale or a myth and I let everyone kind of pick what arose to them and make an image kind of more freely without any strict prompts. And there you can really see that what you chose has been very different from everyone else. And it really kind of makes you think about, why was this so resonating to me, or why did I pick this subject? So it can be very enlightening to do also in groups.